Hello, everybody. Today is Saturday, January 13th. 71 of Block Digest is coming at you at block 504,081. Mr. Rick.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Hope you are having a happy Saturday.
JW playing a Stormtrooper today.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Oh, just sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm here.
And we got Mr. Acnix in his car today.
You.
So let's just dive into the first thing. Tisk, tisk, tisk. So we could call this an indicator that the miner news is legit. Prices for things change. But yeah, so now the maintenance fees spiked from 6% to 50%. Roll. If you want to cancel they only pay out in Bitcoin Cash.
Nothing shady about
use
that at
case,
all.
guys.
Just instantly, the only way you can get your money out is with Bitcoin Cash. Nothing odd going on there.
Dude, it's the use case. We found the use case. Cloud miners can dump their bags, buying their cloud mining contracts, and walk away and keep their Bitcoin.
It's totally ransomware. I mean, it's an absolute ransomware situation, right? We've got your money. Oh, we were going to give it to you. No. Now we're going to keep most of it, and the only way that we're going to give you anything is in Bitcoin Cash, which is going to pump the price of Bitcoin Cash, and we probably own a little bit of that too.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. I think we're going to see in these first few stories how bad this Bitcoin Cash thing. It's not just on this thing; it's some other problems going on.
I'm kind of curious though, like with China starting to finally kind of the bandwagon around Bitcoin and try to chase it out of the country. Their take going to be on this if they even pay attention or see this. The legality in China of just like paying somebody back for a contract and fulfilled in some completely different asset. Illegal.
Oh, I don't tell you, these cloud mining contracts, there's something I've just sort of looked at and been like, no, this just seems way too scammy to me. You just send somebody some money and you hope they're running a miner there, and supposedly you're going to get, part of the reward, which I don't know. I guess some people do run those operations, but I don't really trust them. I mean, not unless the miner was there. But yeah, the whole Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin contracts, and yeah, this is where we're running into some trouble with that. That Overstock story too is just ridiculous. But yeah, we'll get to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you actually want to take us through the next it's a little more in depth than just buy PTC's got to raise their prices.
Yeah, I mean, like in Canada, we've been hearing recently from Francis that they've been doing some work there to bring in these mining companies over there and make a good incentive for them to come over there. And this article really lays that out in pretty good detail. It mentions how Bitmain and these other Chinese mining companies are looking, in this Quebec province, and they're doing that because this company Hydra Quebec, they offer pretty much the cheapest price. They're the cheapest price for electricity in North America at 0.02 cents per kilowatt. But yeah, it says they're moving to this province and they're checking out Switzerland and these other places. But right now they're just having trouble with all the facilities because they want warehouses already built, plugged into these systems to where they could just bring in the miners and start running them. And they're really having trouble finding all the facilities for all these miners coming over there. And they're talking about how in the neighboring province of Manitoba province, there's a Manitoba Hydro that's already fielded like 100 inquiries for cryptocurrency miners in the past 3 months over there. And you know, it's just it really does like show that, you know, these guys, you know, they're moving around. That decentralized mining is happening, and like Quebec is really competitive for this market right now. I mean, like, you know, they're saying they're buying up textile and pulp and paper factories because these things are already built. They don't want to waste the time of building a facility that's going to take a year and then load it up and get it running. So, I mean, while this VIBE BTC and this Chinese mining news might be pretty, you know, I don't know, it's been proposed as grim, but we've talked about how it's going to decentralize the mining, and we're seeing that. And, you know, Quebec and Canada, they look like they're going to be ready to take that, you know, those mining companies over there and just sort of keep them working. So, yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about moving up to the Pacific Northwest to do some mining myself for a while, but, you know, I don't know, maybe now I see all this stuff going on. It just keeps bringing it back up. This morning I was looking at listings up there. It's like, God, I just need to focus on what I'm doing for right now. This is, it's going to be an awesome year to see all this stuff pop up, you know, outside of China.
I mean, it's wherever the hell the cheap power is, and it's going to be really interesting because personally they see kind of like a parallel between this and like gentrification. Like you have like, you know, more well-off people move into a neighborhood, like start renovating things, driving the value up, and then it's just like a never-ending cycle. Whereas like when you have mining here as like cheap scalable electricity prices, they're going to have like these big farms scouting around, like looking for real estate, looking for like any existing warehouses or places they can actually house their equipment, and they're going to bid the prices for shit up, and then you're going to have it hit that equilibrium where it doesn't make sense for more people to come in, and then the whole thing's just going to repeat itself somewhere else. And it's going to get really weird, I think, because I mean, like, real estate prices anywhere there's cheap electricity, really.
Yeah, I think, you know, we see that whenever they talk about this Manitoba, which I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, that province that's got that fielded the 100 inquiries, you know, they're talking about raising their price for energy, like per kilowatt, in April of this year. And, you know, we might see some legislation drawn up before that to make sure that stays down, to make sure that this mining will come in there. And one of the other things this article really stressed on was like how they're trying to make, you know, this all green Bitcoin. You know, this isn't like energy from, you know, plants or whatever, which I don't know. There's lots of arguments that all that's zero, like a zero-sum game and everything like that. But I mean, I don't know. I just love the idea because, you know, here in Colorado, we get a lot of sun, we got mountains, and we got dams. And I just think it's interesting to try and pull all these renewable sources together to create this value, and then use that value for the good of the people that are using, that are collecting that. And, you know, that incentive structure could really revolutionize the way we do power, like you're saying. I mean, like, you know, it's some sort of system that feeds itself, as far as like if you find the efficiency and it's renewable and you're not really paying that much for it and you're getting a lot of value and you can use that to secure your position in political arguments, it's fascinating.
I'm just glad we haven't done anything stupid like change proof of work or set us back. You know, that always comes up every couple months, it seems like. But some of these security issues like centralized mining, they just take a long time to solve, right? Like when you're talking about something like introducing more competition, the only way that happens is for a long period of time for there to be profits among a group of companies, and then other companies get involved because they see that there's profits, and if they can continue to make profits, they suck in other companies. But this stuff doesn't happen like, you know, open source software development, right? The markets take time to communicate that data. It's very, very laggy and very slow to get everybody to understand it and take advantage of it. So, you know, there's still a long ways to go, but it does seem like every couple of weeks now we're hearing news of something moving significantly in that direction. So, you know, it's good news for sure.
I'm really psyched about it. I really want to get up there and visit for like a conference or something, just to sort of visit that community up there, because it seems really like a, you know, community that's ready to keep moving forward.
And I bet you anything that, you know, with the direction that the US is going, where they're denying so many people visas to go to the US, even for very short trips like conferences, I'm pretty sure that Canada is going to become the location now for most of the major Bitcoin or cryptocurrency conferences, because if people can't get into the US, then you lose a lot of foreign speakers. Well, so probably a lot of people are moving to Canada for other reasons besides mining.
Canada, you're absolutely right. Canada's always been a big place for security conferences for that reason in general. I mean, it's not Black Hat and, you know, DEF CON in Vegas, but there are definitely you know, some really good conferences up there because of people that can't get into the US.
Yeah. And I mean, like that, I don't know, this is where like their silence on the issue is kind of deafening, because it like, you know, if they would sort of encourage more of this, this technology with the sort of the same way like Quebec's doing these, you know, trying to get this thing running and make sure that people, there's nothing really hindering them from creating these systems to take over it. I don't know. It's kind of lost my thought there. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's the U.S. at the end of the day, they're gonna just lose out in the dominant position we have in the world if we adapt to where the world is going. But I mean, speaking of dominant players, lose their position of dominance. Coinbase, everybody.
They just can't do anything right.
So they shut down.
My conspiracy theory when I saw that thread, it was like right after I hit send, that was the next thing that popped up in my feed.
Oh, it's perfect. Like they literally shut down BTC withdrawals. Whoa, what's that? We see the mempool start shrinking down, and then oh my God, here's a huge spike right after they announced the fucking withdrawals.
Yeah, I think this is the most damning evidence we've seen out of like Coinbase and their problems with batching and SegWit, you know, addresses, and just the way that they're handling business. And yeah, I mean, it really just kind of feeds into this like Conbase and, you know, what are they really doing? Because, you know, yeah, I know this story goes right into that Overstock and like, you know, the way that they're handling Bitcoin Cash and stuff. It's just, yeah, I don't know. The fees, yeah, it's obvious. I don't know. Customers, we need to move away from Conbase. It's time.
It's clearly market manipulation, right? Like if you're making investments in general, you love the idea of being able to kind of manipulate the markets or make the markets, right? So if you can have a big enough voice to where like Jamie Dimon, you can make an announcement and have the markets move based on that. That's the dream of all of these clowns, and Coinbase has definitely got it right. I mean, they can freaking slow down Bitcoin to a crawl. They can pump Bcash. They can turn that off if they want. They can improve it, right? They could batch for a little while, and then everybody would say, "Oh, Bitcoin's doing better," and then they can make bets based on that before it happens. And then they can coordinate with this, you know, NYA cartel and all of the other stuff that goes along with that, and the Roger Ver connection. I mean, it's clear, it's painfully clear at this point that that these guys are just they're all doing market manipulation tactics and trying to profit from that. And you know, it's technically illegal, but they'll probably get away with it if they grease the right people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, sorry for not remembering. I'm blocked by Brian, but this is his response to it. We're doing the stuffs, guys. Thanks for bearing with us.
It's just like his 2017 tweets about how SegWit's going to be like, you know, they're the main thing they're working on and everything. It just, yeah, I don't know. It feels like JW saying, it's so obvious, and it, I don't know. It's like we're saying that the law is kind of being deafening. I wish. I don't know, man. I know nobody really likes regulators, but I'd like to see some news like, you know, hey, Coinbase's headquarters busted down by SEC. Like, I don't know. At this point, I think that'd be some good news.
Well, keep in mind that Coinbase isn't the only exchange having this problem with batching and not having SegWit, Gemini also has the same problem. The only reason people aren't pointing it out as much is because Coinbase is so much larger.
That's what I read that tweet too. And I read a tweet that said that, and it just like, yeah, that's where it's like, okay, as a US customer, it kind of becomes abysmal. But you know, like like that BISC is coming on. I'm really trying to get that account set up, and like Bitflyer, I need to set up with those guys. And I mean, really, I guess it's just going to take, no matter what, we're going to have to put pressure on these exchanges until fully decentralized exchanges are up and running to enable SegWit, because I don't know, they're not incentivized to do that right now.
It wouldn't be so bad with Coinbase. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, like, this is something that affects not just Coinbase customers. Like, this is externalized of everybody. Like, I mean, it's more than 50% of the shit pool and the chain. Just, we're not optimizing things because gotta add more shit coins. Like, this is insane. The tragedy of the commons playing out, and this is exactly why go poof, no block size, there's no problems anymore. Like, Coinbase will just keep doing this. More businesses like this and treat the blockchain like this. And there's a person out there who thinks we can just do it a little bit, because then these businesses will not learn, and the problem will just get exponentially worse.
I don't even buy the idea that they were, trying to increase the block size so that they didn't have to write code to deal with SegWit. I think these guys have been behind, like, in supporting every attack since, like, Bitcoin XT, right? Like, every time that there's a way to make Bitcoin less functional, less useful, Coinbase is, like, right there, number, top 3 of the list. So it's not like I'm complaining that they haven't prioritized this enough. Like, look, if you're doing big deals with corporations and you've got some code that you have to write, you've got limited resources, fine. That's not my issue with these guys. My issue is they're clearly pumping Bcash, then they're turning around and pumping Ethereum, and they're doing all of this stuff, and it just lines up too well, right, with some intentional motives. If they weren't one of the biggest voices complaining about fees and saying we got to support stuff like Bcash because of fees, or Ethereum because of fees on Bitcoin, it wouldn't be quite as obvious that these guys are doing it on purpose. But I think it's pretty obvious they're doing it on purpose.
But JW, those scary, scary lightning hubs that are going to centralize the network, what will we ever do about those?
Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, you got to listen to that. You got to listen to that talk that the Lightning guys did at Coinbase, and then listen to Brian Armstrong ask questions about centralization and how scary it is and how dense he is. Like, he either is super dense in that moment, or he's just trying to manipulate the other people in the room. Like, he's actually fudding his own employees. And Traj and Joseph Poon are doing their best not to. Like, the most generous comment I've ever heard in my life was Joseph Poon saying, "I think it's really good you guys are concerned about centralization. I'm glad you're thinking along those lines." You got to watch it. It makes you want to.
Dude, Brian's an idiot. Like, he is an idiot. Like, he has tried to compare clients for Bitcoin to web browsers. Different web browser, guys. It's still on the same web. Like, competition for this is healthy. There is insanely specific cryptographic data that needs to be, like, flagged with the exact same result on every single machine out there. Otherwise, you don't have a cohesive network functioning. It's just like a web browser, guys. All of them. They do all kinds of different things. Like, he's an idiot. And despite all of this shit happening over the last year, to just time and time again show how completely fundamentally broken Ethereum is. He's still, like, Brian is personally mostly invested in Ethereum. Like he thinks Ethereum is going to be the blockchain system that wins. He's an idiot. Like everything going on at that company is that one man is an idiot and he needs to be fired. Who's the investor?
I mean, like I'll tell you, you know, after seeing, like you're saying, after this all playing out, I just like wonder, how did he get this job? Like where, like how did he get to the head of Coinbase? Because it is like, yeah, it just seems like he's just trying to wreck the network because, yeah, the infrastructure is just like, yeah, like JW's saying, you know, he whines about it, but you know, it's like you're basically in control of like most of these coins moving around and how, you know, these fees function and stuff anyway. So I don't know. This it makes me wonder because, like, yeah, just like we're saying, Roger's there, Bcash, you know, and we're seeing it still with on Twitter right now. It's like every couple hours or days you see something about, oh, well, Ripple is going to be added to Coinbase, and still just this whole thing is continuing. So as far as like that tweet that said, you know, they're working on it and stuff, I think that, you know, our you know, we're right to speculate that they're working on something else that's not really for the network. And, you know, we're seeing that those problems just spill out all over the place. That Bcash Bitcoin problem, like, yeah, it's bad.
Hey, so
like I
follow me on
seriously,
Twitter. I'm working on a solution to let you email Bitcoin to your friends and buy Bitcoin via email with BISC on the back end. So it's really super easy. I think that's the way that we should respond to these jerks at Coinbase, is just try to create good alternatives. So follow me on Twitter. I'll make an announcement once we have something that's usable. We've got a little bit of a demo video at jwweatherman.com that you can give me feedback on too. But just for the record, I hated Coinbase before I came up with this idea. The only reason I'm doing this is because I hate them so much right
now. Yeah, I mean, like they're just idiots. Like, if the reason that they're not batching things is literally just because people, and we're too stupid to think of something like maps to inputs for batch transactions to know who's withdrawing what. Like, I haven't even gotten to the second thing that they've done just completely stupid. Coinbase does the merchant processing for Overstock, and yeah, pretty much a security researcher found that when he went something from Overstock and was given a quote in Bitcoin, that amount of Bitcoin Cash, like a fifth or a sixth of Bitcoin, and their system would register that. Like he could just get like a pretty much like an 80% discount. And on top of that, even get a refund on you in Bitcoin. So like somebody could have literally sat there and like ordered something from Overstock, Bitcoin Cash, which is worth jack shit, and then go, wait, I'm canceling this. Give me a refund in Bitcoin. 5 times the money. And they could just do that. And Coinbase is pretty much trying to say Overstock using their API. I don't believe it. Like that is such a managed, profitable company. Like one of their developers fucked up using an API for merchant processing. No. Like that was Coinbase, in my opinion.
You know, this reminds me of that. Like, I wanted to bring this up because we did that Bitcoin.com wallet, and like, we ran through the process of signing up at Bitcoin.com and setting up a wallet to sort of see how the Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin and buying Bitcoin from Bitcoin.com process would work. And it was a hell of a lot of confusion like this. And I could definitely see how this is a problem throughout anybody that's accepting Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin at the same time. And yeah, I just I think it's ridiculous that this is like a major company in the ecosystem, and they're just basic, you know, like their infrastructure is just not working. Like, I mean, somebody goes to overstock.com and buys something with Bitcoin Cash and then gets a withdrawal in Bitcoin, I mean, you can, I mean, like the article says, you can make a lot of Bitcoin that way. And I don't know who's doing it and like why it's all set up like this, but it's just like obvious that there's so much back end dirty work. It's not really, you know, it's not, I don't know. This is where it was like Bitcoin Cash was like an attack on the system because it's trying to confuse everyone. And it's obvious that's kind of what it's doing. It's playing out that way. And it's not just, you know, Bitcoin.com's wallets. It's now on Overstock and the way that they're handling these transactions. It's just like it muddies the whole water as far as like, you know, what is this trying to achieve? And yeah, it's real disappointing.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously just trying to achieve some chaos, right? And some confusion and some opportunity to make some trades for people that are in the know. And anybody that looks at Bcash and says, well, that's all right, I'm glad it exists because I'll be able to manipulate the market myself or play the game, like do some momentum trading and get more Bitcoin out of the process. I just say you're gambling in an establishment where the rules are fixed, right? Like you are trying to gamble against Roger Ver and this group in this cartel that can hit a button and either pump it or dump it in an instant and wipe you out. It's probably not a good strategy, but yeah, I mean, there's no question that, like, at the end of the day, none of these guys, I think, really believe that this is going to replace Bitcoin or compete with Bitcoin. Like I've said before, there's just no developers, right? Like, as dumb as Brian Armstrong is, he did get into Y Combinator, right? He did get Paul Graham to give him some money, and he has built up a company that's relatively successful. You can't be that stupid to think that Bitcoin Cash with no talented developers is going to beat Bitcoin. You know, Jameson Lott put out some stats of all the stuff that was done on Bitcoin last year. It's really impressive. The number of check-ins and merges for something that is, you know, a cryptographic protocol. There's a lot of activity there, and it's just a desert for Bitcoin Cash. So there's no question those guys are not that dumb. They know that it's not going anywhere. They just know that there's a lot of dumb people that will believe it, and that they can do stuff like this, you know, play these games with naming and, you know, freak out and try to keep everybody confused and, you know, maybe even intentionally screw with some APIs in order to pump up the amount of volume on Bitcoin Cash through Overstock, right? Like maybe there was some kind of scheme going on there. Like these guys are very greasy and they're playing a lot of games at the same time. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was a little bit of incompetence and a little bit of, oh, that's not how we intended it to work. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's short-lived. It's almost over, I think. Give it another 6 months, maybe.
Yeah,
well,
I hope less than that.
Well, even if Bitcoin Cash did have like one or two really talented developers, which they might have, I don't know. I haven't really looked at the code, but even if they did, wouldn't that kind of, I mean, the whole point of them like having this all-in-out war against Bitcoin Core, the, you know, loose conglomeration of developers, the whole argument they were making against them was that, oh, there's not enough of you having any input on the code, which isn't true, obviously. But, you know, even if that was true, Bitcoin Cash would be in a lot worse situation because they don't have that. They have even fewer developers working on it. So I feel like they're complaining about development centralization when they themselves suffer that problem.
But multiple clients.
Oh yeah, yeah. They have They have multiple clients, each run by one developer each, or something.
Yeah, it's decentralized. How can you deny that?
Yeah, but has anyone actually looked at the code and gone like, here are the differences between each of the clients? I mean, I would love to know what the differences are.
It's such a joke. I mean, nobody would, because when you start out a project by taking a good project and forking it and then doing retarded things to it, no developer that has any clue what's going on is going to be interested. So you've guaranteed that there's not going to be any talented developers. By definition of what your project is all about. You don't have to be a genius to tell that this thing is a scam. But if you are, you're definitely not working on it. I mean, if you are a genius, right?
Well, like just thinking like from the mumble, nothing much was telling me that like John Newberry, like, you know, found that 1/1 bug in BTC1. So I mean, like, I know there's some people that have run through the code and like, you know, they found problems. So
yeah, and that still is not up, by the way. They never fixed it. They just left it.
right. Yeah. It's how much they care about the functionality of the stuff.
Abandonware. Ah, boy.
It's vaporware. It's showing up with an Adobe, you know, graphic of what your software is going to do to a meeting and then selling people on it. It's just the same old thing that scammers have been doing in software for a long time, but they're just doing it to the general public and to a lot of, you know, people that are going to be hurt a lot more by it.
It's just something you got to build an immunity to. Speaking of things that the public needs to be inoculated against, you want to tell us a little bit about this Kodak thing, Janine?
Yeah, hopefully I don't break up too much. So you probably heard that Kodak, yes, Kodak, the camera company that actually initially missed out on being a camera company because they, you know, developed some. What was it? They actually developed digital photography, and then they're like, "Oh, yeah, it probably won't work." And then they like missed the boat, and a bunch of other companies got in before them. I think that was the gist of it. Well, now they're very determined not to miss the boat on ICOs because they are launching their own token. I believe I'm not sure when the date is. I think it was actually the end of January this month. Amazingly enough, haven't seen any code regarding the platform that it's going to be running on. But it's very interesting because I made a tweet about how, you know, a lot of the things that they're planning to do with it, I'm pretty sure that you, instead of making this whole token, like a lot of things, you could probably use some existing service that already works on top of Bitcoin. For example, open timestamps, because one of the things that it appears they're trying to do is to make a record of artists and their ownership of photos. And so they haven't really given a lot of detail about how the platform is going to work, but I assume based on that goal that they're going to do something involving hashing the photos and then putting those hashes into the blockchain so that then you can, you know, look up the hash and, if it matches, if someone else tries to upload the photo and it matches that hash, then it's like, this photo is already owned by someone else and blah, blah. And I guess basically what they're going to also do with the platform is enable, you know, consumers to come in and buy the photos with this Kodak, or they're going to have the consumers buy the Kodak coin to buy the photos and then give the coin to the art. I don't know. Something about they're going to give. I don't exactly know where this coin fits in because, I mean, someone has to buy the coin and then the coin has to be sold. And, you know, are they going to force the artist to figure out how to sell the coin, or what are they going to do? No idea. But yeah, I think this is something that 90% of it could probably just be handled by building on open timestamps. And, you know, the thing that immediately struck me is that, wow, this sounds a lot like that Facebook anti-revenge porn tool, because they had that whole scheme about how, we're going to prevent porn by like hashing all of these intimate images. And then if anyone uploads a photo, we're going to compare the hashes and then we're going to stop it. But it's like, problem that if you change one pixel in the photo, then it completely changes the hash. And then you know, so they're apparently going to have this web crawler that is looking around for photos on the web to find like instances of where, I'll get the tweet. They're basically going to have a web crawler that, I guess, I don't know if it's only searching the platform or it's searching the web in general, but I assume it's probably going to be looking for these hashes. And as I said, it's the same problem that Facebook had. Because, like I said, you can change one pixel, changes the hash. So I don't know if they're going to, in addition, use some kind of machine learning thing like Google, how Google finds photos in their archive by, you know, using an AI. No idea. They don't really give that lot of detail. I don't see any I don't see any detail because I can't really judge it. All I can go off of is, you know, the fact that they're launching this token in 1 month. There's no code to be seen, so it's probably not going to be open source. And I don't exactly know what problem they're solving, to be honest.
I guarantee you they don't either. But somebody in the marketing department needs a promotion. Every company that is a mid-size publicly traded company should pay attention to this, because all you have to do is come up with a half-ass idea about how you're going to get involved with this new wave of technology. And that's enough to set you apart from like all these other morons that you have to choose from when you're trying to fill up your 401k because you still can't buy Bitcoin. So, you know, I got to give them credit where credit's due. They probably have no idea what they're going to build. They'll probably slap something together, but they will be like one of the least scammy altcoins out there. So at least they've got that going for them.
Yeah, so as you can see, the stock price of Kodak shot up right after the announcement of the platform. And there's another thing. Oh, I can hear myself on Shinobi's end. Yeah, so another thing that we saw is that someone found what looks like an Antminer S9 or Bitmain miner that had the Kodak logo on it. Now, Shinobi pointed out that the logo, if you look at it really closely, where it says Kodak and it's gray, the angles don't, like the angles of the label versus the actual Antminer don't actually match up. So it might be fake. We don't know, or maybe it's just a bad cut or a bad photo. But someone found this flyer about signing up for this Kodak hash power miner, which I think there's another tweet from Safedine. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Sorry. I think it's Safedine. He actually goes through the model or the profit model that Kodak claims to have on this little spreadsheet here. And he says, nope, it's actually pretty much a scam. There's no way you're going to make that much because Kodak is definitely going to make a lot more. It just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I'm not quite sure if anyone has confirmed yet whether this thing is real, but obviously someone is definitely going around with this flyer saying, we're going to sell you this miner, and they're using the Kodak logo. And it just seems weird that this got announced at the same time as the Kodak ICO. So it's possible that Kodak is doing it. It's also possible that someone took advantage, like maybe they knew in advance that Kodak was going to do that announcement. And so they thought, oh, I'm going to do this scam where I try to sell people miners. No idea yet, but regardless, it's not going to work either way.
Now that is picture perfect.
Right. You know, I'm looking at the pictures and it's like one's called Kodak Coin, the other's the Kodak Cash miner. They don't even know what the hell they're doing. Like, you know, what their like marketing pitch is, if they're a coin or a cash or whatever, you know. I don't know. It's just like CES is where this came out of, right? CES 2018, that Consumer Electronics Show. I don't know, man. It's just pumpy. Like, so it's like one of these things where I think JW's right. It's like if you're a small company and you haven't like issued your own token and like released a miner or something like that, then you're not doing your fiduciary duty, because this is just like the way that things are right now. I mean, like you might as well just go ahead and do it. And it's this ridiculous. Like you can have the cash. I don't even know if Kodak brought this stuff in. It's probably some guy just walking around handing out pamphlets, and then the other Kodak really had their coin, and who the hell knows? Something similar was like IBM put out that quantum computing thing, and it looks like just like I don't know. They have some instrument out there, and it's like, this is the quantum computer, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's what you're telling me because you're at CES 2018 and you want to pamp your company, but it's like IBM and Kodak, what do you do besides government contracts? I don't know. You need to die.
Well, the funny thing is that this is kind of a tangent, but I thought it was just hilarious. That Kodak announcement was actually not the weirdest thing to happen at CES. There was apparently these androids who were pole dancing at a nearby strip club near the venue. And I just like, I mean, just look at that. Does that not terrify you out of your mind? And it's so funny because this, like, all of the articles were marked like none of the men were really interested. And it's like, who, if you are sexually attracted to a robot that has a surveillance camera for a head, do not ever contact me.
Oh my God.
It's the lowest common denominator appeal. Like they're just attracted to that little butt part of the robot. That's it.
There's 2 curves on it. That's all I need.
People are just exhibitionists. Like,
well, the funny part is that it was like made into this whole controversy about how, you know, it's, you know, sexism at the conference, and that, you know, this is something like men would enjoy, but women obviously wouldn't. It's like, I don't think that men enjoyed it either, but whatever. But it's funny because the robots were actually made by an artist from, I think, the UK, and it was actually commentary on the surveillance state. So they weren't even actually intended to be for entertainment purposes. It was supposed to be, you know, political art. So yeah, it's like weird things happening at that conference.
Totally. Yeah, I mean,
politics at a strip club. Where are the boobs?
as much as that Kodak thing is kind of crazy, it does show just how much crazy interest, crazy in a good way, there is in, I'm going to say it even though it makes me throw up a little bit, blockchain technology, right? I mean, nobody really understands it. They don't know what's going on, but they have a sense, right? It's like they can kind of feel that this is going to be game changing and really important, like AI or the internet or something like that. But they don't know enough about it to know where to put their money. So that's why companies like Kodak or brands like Kodak can take advantage of this period. But I mean, if you could go back to, I don't know, like 1990 or something, 91, 92, when the internet is kind of starting to get going, and you could invest in a company, that would be interesting. But we're in this really amazing position where we can actually invest in the base protocol, right? Like we can own a piece of like the IP network, right? And that, regardless of whether it's going to be Amazon or pets.com, that base layer technology that's actually useful, that's got everybody freaking out and excited about the impact that it's going to have. And then all the dumb money spills over the sides and goes into stuff like Ethereum and Bcash and Litecoin and all this bullshit. But we still have the opportunity to invest in the core technology and take advantage of what the dumb money can sense in a general sense. We should be able to help people understand. And, you know, I'm certainly trying to do that as well. Help people understand that the actual real thing does exist, and it's really exciting, and it's going to have a bigger impact than even people that are just generally kind of freaking out about it understand.
Mm-hmm. I mean, hopefully at the end, they actually realize what they should really care about is just applied cryptography in the correct ways. And just companies looking at it. Even the freaking SEC. Blockchain, look, guys, pay attention to us.
Well, yeah, and the funniest part about this tweet is this is the same SEC that filed that cease and desist order against BitConnect. It's the same office.
Some jokers there at the SEC and Fort Worth, I guess. But yeah, I don't know, that just, I don't know, makes me wonder if it's a market signal to companies like Kodak. Yeah, go ahead, say you're going to release a coin, say you're going to do a token. We don't give a crap right now. Go ahead and do it. Just do it. Like we're even saying we're going to do it. So just do it.
I have a feeling a lot of people in the ass.
It's more like them trying to get people to just pay attention to them. They're starting to realize like they can't really like all they can do is either wag their finger and go, don't do that, find a big enough target they can actually get, like make an example of somebody. What can they do?
I think they should make an example out of BitConnect and Coinbase. That's it. Those two. But yeah, I don't know. That news did talk about how it's like they need to register as a regulated security before they operate. So I mean, like it'd be interesting to see if they register as a security and then all of a sudden they're allowed to operate. And I don't know, man. I don't really know what the SEC is doing other than, you know, apparently they're all paying attention to this. We're going to see that in that Treasury Secretary story here in a little bit.
Yeah, and the last point I want to make, like the obviously there's a difference between Facebook's implementation of hashing for photos and Kodak's possible implementation of using hashes to like enforce DRM and stuff. Facebook is not putting any of these photos on a blockchain, and they haven't monetized it, whereas Kodak is going to be doing that. So I would love to know what their standards of content quality or content, you know, that I would love to know what their standards are, because to me it seems like, you know, they've basically made revenge porn monetized and immutable.
Some crazy markets.
Yeah, it's you want to hop back on Mike though? I think this is something Janine got a big chuckle out of. It does not trigger me, contrary to what you might have thought.
Really? It doesn't. I mean, come on. It's like Bitcoin and Magic the Gathering in the same tweet. Like, how does that not give people flashbacks? I just thought it was really funny because I saw it. I was like, whoa, do you understand the history of the connection between these two things? I am not investing in those cards.
Those cards, it's like chess, except you build your own chess set with different things that do different stuff and aren't all the same.
Yeah, and for anyone who's new and doesn't understand the connection, Magic the Gathering was the original, or the trading of Magic the Gathering cards was the original business goal of Mt. Gox. The whole reason Mt. Gox is called Mt. Gox is because it's Magic Ring online exchange. Yeah, so that's why I saw it and I thought, oh, that would probably freak people out.
I just can't believe that it could be that expensive to counterfeit that thing, right? Like a $50,000 bill. Come on, you could counterfeit that, let alone some playing cards.
I don't think you realize how serious people take cards, JW. You
Clearly not.
Magic.
I guess the guys spending $50,000 are going to know whether or not it's legit or not. Because, I mean, you know, this is kind of similarly, I got into Bitcoin from that same thing. It's just like these ridiculous numbers priced to things where it's got to ask you, like, what is money? I mean, mine was like the CSGO skins thing, where it's like that one. I don't know, it seems even more arbitrary than this card. Like, at least with this card, you could maybe verify, like, okay, there's only so many of these out there, and, you know, this and that and the other. Where on games like that, like, you know, they're trading these digital items that are worth thousands of dollars, $20,000, $50,000. And if that thing gets stolen, it's really just arbitrary for some person working in this, you know, not publicly traded company, no books out there, and they just create another little strip of code and sit it out there. There's another $50,000. That one's a lot more screwy. And like, I just hope these things are waking people up to going, what the hell is money? What the hell is money that this thing's worth $50,000? What the hell is money if people are spending their money on this thing and it just disappears and somebody can arbitrarily create another one? Like, just look at these stories and ask yourself, what is money?
At 0% interest rates, if you can borrow money at 0%, you can actually, you can, like, let's say just as a joke, we went and we could get a loan from the Federal Reserve at 0%, which you can if you're an insider. You could go buy this Magic the Gathering card, and if it never goes up, then you just never pay it back, right? You just put it on your shelf. And you're like, I owe the government $50,000 because I bought this card, and the card's only worth $20 now. But It's at 0% interest. So I'm just never going to pay them back. On the other hand, if that card goes up to $100,000, you can sell it, pay off your loan, and walk away clean. And that's the scam that a lot of these guys are running right now at big scale, at $500 billion scale. They're buying stuff, they're shorting stuff, they're playing games in the market, using the money that they can get from the Fed at 0% interest. So yeah, it is a joke, but the whole thing is disturbingly that bad.
I saw someone on Twitter about a week ago make a joke about how, like, if a Bitcoiner ever went to court with the IRS about like their tax liabilities, it would be so funny because it'd be like, yes, Your Honor, I bought this ICO and this. No, this is not a pyramid scheme. Yes, I also bought these Magic the Gathering cards. What are they? Oh, it's just this online game thing. It's like, it would be the funniest trial ever. Really hope no one has to go through that, but I would, if that does happen, I hope they live stream it.
That would be a funny thing to watch for sure. It's been a wild decade. I mean, like, yeah, this is like, I don't know. It's like, like JW, you're saying, you're right. These banks borrow at 0% interest, but the mom and pop and like the kid playing Magic the Gathering doesn't see that. But maybe they see this card and they say, that's screwed up. How come that's like that? And they see like a parallel in the system where they can equate it and say, okay, maybe there's something where there's like a bigger problem here, that we're like investing our security and our value on this system. And maybe that like breaks in people into Bitcoin from these different areas that just are nowhere near the finance sector, because that's kind of what happened to me. I was just sort of, a computer enthusiast, building computers, playing video game I've been playing for decades. And all of a sudden these guns come out that are worth money, these knives, and like I get scammed and I'm like, what the hell is this? How's this money? And I start researching and I fall down the rabbit hole. And so like, hopefully more people will see this and they'll see it as like a systemic problem where there is an answer.
Yeah. Trying to find a place to store value at all is a great way to end up in Bitcoin, because you might look at something like the card and then you might go, well, that can be counterfeit, but gold can't. I'll buy gold. And then you go, oh yeah, but that stuff's really heavy. And if I ever wanted to go to Canada with it, they'd probably confiscate it at the border, and then you go, well, what about Bitcoin? And it checks all those boxes. So yeah, it's very hopeful.
Your Honor, are you trying to tell me it's illegal for me to pay somebody money to send me cat pictures on the internet? Yes.
Not only sending cat pictures, but breeding cat pictures.
All this legal gray stuff.
Oh my God. The killer app of Ethereum.
The judge's head imploding. But I don't know. You wanna break down this this bit of news, Mr. Rick?
Oh yeah, let's see. Okay, yeah. Next Swiss bank account from the Treasury Secretary. Yeah, this was an interview with Bloomberg that the Treasury Secretary had, and let me see what catch his name. Stephen Mnuchin, and yeah, he said that like the host asked what are their plans with Bitcoin, and like they're kind of laughing and joking. The host says he doesn't know what Bitcoin is, and the Treasury Secretary says they're working on these quote unquote cyber securities, and the number one thing they want to make sure bad people cannot use Bitcoin to do bad things, quote unquote KYC AML. Basically, they just want to make sure that everybody's using know your customer and anti-money laundering laws, because they are saying like, yeah, this is like a Swiss bank account. They want to make sure that you're doing all these regulations that they have for these things. Now, the other two thing he said was he wants to make sure consumers trading on speculation understand the risk. And both of these things, like I think that they could really, make a move on guys like Coinbase and BitConnect to kind of make an example out of like what the problems are in the space. But I think we're gonna have to wait to see all that. And the host did ask him like, what he thinks about Russia issuing a cryptocurrency to avoid sanctions. And he really just kind of rubs it off really quickly, sort of saying like that's not an issue. And you know, he does say like he doesn't see a reason for central banks to issue these crypto dollars or rubles at the moment. And you know, maybe that's a little bit to do with like he does sort of understand like the way the, you know, that just creating one of these out of a central entity is not really going to be helpful, or if he's just saying that to sort of like rub down the idea of like this is a pretty political powerful thing that, you know, these other countries are going to use to skirt sanctions. Because I mean, honestly, myself, I see it as something that they could use, and as long as they understand what they're doing. And yeah, it's just it's an interesting article about like how the Treasury Secretary is like seeing these cryptocurrencies, and the way that Washington and the SEC is like, you know, putting together these working groups to try and actually come together to regulate these things. And yeah, I think that you know, for the most part, they probably do understand what's going on in the space because of this, the way he talks about the central banks and issuing a digital, you know, dollar or crypto dollar. But you know, I don't know. It's something where like hopefully they'll, like I'm saying, hopefully they'll do some moves that'll actually make like market signals to say like this is wrong, this is not wrong, and you can do this or you can't do that, because you know other countries like Quebec, you know, saying like, hey, yeah, come on, move over here and mine, you know, they're gonna get the business and everything. So I don't know. It's interesting to see them talk about it and like what their opinion is on the matter. But for the most part, I think we kind of knew like they just really want KYC AML. And I mean, as far as like them saying they're worried about customers speculating, that's kind of like, I don't know, if they were, then I think we'd see a lot more of these scams shut down already. So I don't know. It's interesting to see them talk about it. Something coming out of the U.S. government talking about cryptocurrencies, or however they want to talk about it today. It's cyber dollars and, you know, crypto rubles, and it's really, I wish they would come down with some defining language on this whole thing, really.
Yeah, and the thing that I like, because this statement has been made a few times where a U.S. regulator or a European regulator says that wallets have a responsibility to KYC their customers. Now, the caveat to that is that as so far they have not said that. They've only applied that to exchanges and custodial wallets, as in someone else is holding the customer's keys, not the customers themselves. So at this moment, as long as you are controlling your own keys, whoever is providing that wallet service, unless they're holding your keys, they do not have a responsibility to KYC you. Like that, so far there's been no precedent of that, as far as I'm aware. Because I mean, one, that would be extremely hard to do, because if you have like hardware wallets where, you know, people can just pass them around to each other, they don't like, there's no KYC involved in that, because you can just, you know, buy them with cash or buy them with Bitcoin. But because you're not actually giving them any Bitcoin that they're going to be custodians over, I don't think that that's what they're talking about. So in this, like, it should be made clear, like, if anyone's worried, they're mostly talking about exchange wallets and custodial wallets, which are obviously the easiest to go after because that's centralized points of failure. He also said during that interview that he's gotten a group of regulators from different international countries together, and that they're going to be going after this harder. So I guess that was a bit of a warning. I did find it interesting that he was not worried about Russia trying to skirt sanctions like that. Like, I could understand him saying we're looking into it, but like to say, oh, that's not going to happen, or I'm not worried about it, it's like, that seems really weird to me. That makes me really suspicious.
Yeah, that was something where whenever I heard him brush it off so quick, I was like, yeah, he doesn't want that many people to know the power behind this stuff yet. I mean, like, yeah, because I think that could help with those sort of things.
Yeah, it definitely would. And also the comment, I love how these people keep saying like they're worried about Bitcoin being a Swiss bank account. It's like, first of all, it's a Swiss bank, if anything. Two, it's actually better than a Swiss bank because you control your own money. It's not held by a bank, because the whole purpose of a bank is that the bank holds it for you. And I also find it like, because Swiss banks or Swiss bank accounts are always demonized. It's like you realize that every citizen in Switzerland has a Swiss bank account. Like they're not like these magical things that make money disappear. The reason that having a Swiss bank account is so sought after is because, you know, Switzerland is a really nice country to live in. You know, that's where a lot of the people go, because I guess Switzerland is less willing to comply with like extradition stuff related to financial crimes, quote. But they're not like magical things that make money disappear or invisible. Like they're just bank accounts.
I think like the main thing with that is just like ever since World War II and all that gold moving around, they've become really well, I mean, they're like a high mountain country. It makes sense for them to, like, you know, they handle their own in-house banking and all that stuff. So it's like similar to Hong Kong as far as like getting a bank account in Hong Kong. It's just like where you could go and spend your money, I guess, the most like freely without like, you know, worrying about investing and everything.
It used to be a place where you could like have numbered bank accounts and you could have a certain amount of privacy, and they didn't report to the U.S. Every move that you make. But that went away, you know, in the last couple of decades, where now every bank that is outside the U.S. they really hate it when they have to allow a U.S. citizen to open a bank account, because it creates all of this reporting requirement for them. So U.S. imposed that on Switzerland as well, and Switzerland didn't stand up to it. So now if you open a bank account there, they'll probably try not to let you as a U.S. citizen because it's not profitable for them anymore. But if they do let you, they are obligated to constantly report back to the U.S. government on basically all of your transactions. And I think he's probably right that there isn't any reason to worry about any country creating a cryptocurrency in order to skirt sanctions. Because they're the big scam, you know, it's like these governments have scams within scams that they're running, and they're not going to compromise their biggest moneymaker, right? Their very best scam, which is their whole central banking and fractional reserve system, where they can manipulate the market and create money out of thin air by going to a digital currency where everybody can actually own their cash, right? It's the same reason these countries have been really trying to reduce the amount of cash in circulation. You know, they're constantly eliminating higher dollar denomination paper, right? Like we don't have a $10,000 bill anymore. We don't have a $1,000 bill anymore. We only have a $100 bill. At the same time that they're printing more money, so that it just gets more and more unwieldy to use cash. They really don't want to have any cash in the system at all, because when you have cash, if they go to negative interest rates, then you actually get kind of a return on your investment, right? By holding on to cash, it becomes more valuable. And they really don't want that. So I think that's why he's probably like, oh, don't worry about that. They're not gonna issue a digital ruble. Don't you know how this ruble scam works? Like, guys, don't you know what central banks do? We're not going to compromise that scam in order to, you know, be able to get away with something else. So I think that's probably why he can just laugh it off, because there's no chance of that, right? Like Venezuela was not going to have a petro cryptocurrency. It was never going to happen.
Yeah, and I guess that's why you're seeing nowadays, more recently, you see most of this like hiding money from the U.S. offshore. I guess like that's where that sort of business has moved to nowadays.
It's pretty much impossible, though. I mean, if you're a U.S. citizen and you open a U.S. bank account, you have to do something really shady, like have maybe a citizen in Panama or a company created in Panama. You know, if your name is on the bank account, it doesn't matter where you're at in the globe. The U.S. wants to know exactly what you're doing with every penny.
You gotta have a guy. Gotta get a guy over there. I got you. Yeah, I don't know. It's it's one of those things where I think Bitcoin's gonna take everybody's lunch on this one.
Yeah, every time that kind of stuff comes up, Chris keeps saying that, you know, the U.S. is the new Roman Empire, because the whole idea of Rome was that, which was kind of a new concept for the time period, was that if you were a citizen of Rome, you were a Roman citizen wherever you went, regardless of where you were, even if you were outside Roman borders. And the U.S. has taken on that policy, and I think it's I think there's one other country in the world that does something like that, but it's like an island and it's really small. I don't know. I heard that one time, but the U.S. is really the only country that applies that policy, and it's like, I'm not, I don't, I'm so scared to be part of a country that thinks it's like the Roman Empire because
Yeah, I mean,
we all know how Rome ended.
Yeah, along those lines, if you leave the United States, like if you're a Frenchman and you go to Italy, you pay taxes to Italy, but you don't pay taxes to France. If you're a US citizen and you go to Italy, you may pay taxes to Italy, but you're sure as hell paying taxes to the United States. We're tagged and bagged, and no matter where we're at in the globe, we're expected to send money home to Papa. Yeah, that is, I believe it's uniquely US. Even a taxation issue.
I don't know if it's a new thing, but I heard recently that I don't know if they do it with every country, probably just the European Union, but if you're a US citizen living in Europe, they actually do give you the option to pay taxes in whatever country you're living in, and then you can get like a discount up to a certain amount on your US taxes. So like I think it's like up to $100,000 in taxes. You don't have to pay anything to the US. You pay that to whatever country you're living in, which is pretty good. If you owe less than $100,000 in taxes, or you make less than, I can't remember the exact figures, but they do have some kind of agreement now that they don't double tax you, which is, I guess, I mean,
that's better.
It's like if you have to get beat up, I might as well get beat up less.
Yeah, exactly. I would like them to get rid of the thing where if you reject your U.S. citizenship, you just have to give them a third of all of your earthly goods in order to buy your own freedom.
Oh, well, I think they do kind of apply that policy now. Because last I heard, like, if anyone's not aware, like the number of people that have been renouncing their U.S. citizenship has been going up every year by a lot. And they've also been increasing the price of renouncing it, because you have to fill out all these forms, and you have to, like, I think even regardless of the tax situation, because you have to, like, it's like your exit tax, you have to, like, there's like a renunciation fee, and it keeps going. It's like $6,000 or something right now, I think. Probably more than that. I haven't checked.
You have to pay capital gains tax on all of your existing worth. So if you have $100,000 in the bank and you want to renounce your citizenship and leave the country, you have to write, a $25,000, $30,000 check.
Yep.
This is like, I don't know, like as somebody that, like I've never really been that big of an earner to where I have to fiddle around with taxes and stuff. I just wish they'd figured this stuff out to where people wouldn't mind paying taxes, because it seems like such a headache. It's like just this circle of like, pay your taxes. Well, I'm going to avoid paying the taxes. And it's like this big to-do to avoid, like, and like, I guess the return on avoiding it is still pretty high, because those markets are still there to avoid it. But I don't know. I wish that like there was some sort of way that we could come together to sort of be like, yeah, like, I don't mind paying for this road because I drive on it. I don't mind helping pay for that school bus because my kid rides on it. Like, and we knew that it was actually going to pay for those sort of things.
That's called the market. You don't need a government for that. What you need a government for is to hold a gun to your head and make you buy stuff you wouldn't buy otherwise. And no, that's never going to be efficient and smooth.
There's not really a market for a fire patrol. Where's the fire market?
There absolutely is. There's been more private fire marshals probably in the history of the world than public, but we've just been indoctrinated. We can't get our head around that.
I don't know. I mean, like, okay, like when I say government, like I don't mean like big government. I mean like local governments. Like the idea of your neighborhood government. Like your neighborhood has a local government, right?
What you're looking for is the word voluntary. Like you want it to be local, and really you want it to be voluntary. You want it to be opt-in. Okay, right? Yeah. And as soon as it's opt-in, then it's not called government anymore. It's called the market.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, that's like a different definition in words there. I just wish, like, yeah, we would actually see the things that we pay for. We'd want to pay for it. We know that it goes towards that. And like, we could stop this headache of like, yeah, I need to avoid this. And, it's just causing this big runaround and a waste of value. And it's just a waste of people's time. I wish that, we could get it working correctly.
Wouldn't it be great?
In that world, I will call it government still. I will call it government still just.
Well, wouldn't it be great if, the whole tax system worked on the basis of the government has this amount of expense and then it divides it among people. Instead, it's like, oh, you made this much, we're just going to take it. We don't know if we need it. We actually do. The debt is never going to go away. Like, if they actually told us what their expenses were, I'm pretty sure they would collapse. Like, the whole reason they do that is because they don't want to tell people how much things cost and how much money they're wasting. As I don't know if we discussed it on this show before, but we might have. There was this guy, I think, I don't remember which state, but there was like people near this library kept on the way to the parking lot. There was no sidewalk between the parking lot and the library. There was like this chunk of grass where it was a hill, and people kept going down this hill and falling. So they came up with this idea like, hey, this guy's like, hey, I'll build a staircase, I'll make it safer. And he built it for, I think he used, like, I think the max was $700, something like that, for getting the supplies and the work and stuff. He built the staircase, and the local government comes in, it's like, what are you doing building a staircase without our permission? And so I don't know the conclusion. They might have ended up taking the whole staircase down. But they apparently quoted that if they had built the staircase, it would have cost $100,000.
Yeah, you see that in like $1 million gas station.
Yeah, they're not incentivized to do it cheap. They're incentivized to do it expensive, because that's how you fleece. That's just our modern day version of slavery, is all it is. And that's why I'm into Bitcoin, and that's why I'm an abolitionist, and I don't want them to get more efficient or more friendly or nicer about the way that they whip us and take our stuff. I want voluntarism, and I want to be able to go to the library and pay for the library, and if I don't want to go to the library, not pay for it.
I like that. Voluntarism is a good way to say it, because it's just like, it's too easy right now, the way that this system works, that it's just like you could hide all those things. Like, as somebody that's in the military, it's like you see that waste where it's just like, okay, like, you're giving me a new uniform whenever I just got a new uniform, because, like, I guess you gotta spit these uniforms out, or it's just like, it's the same thing with tanks and trucks and Humvees and all that, like, where you just see Humvees get destroyed because they got a flat tire, because it's got the contract, go ahead and make the whole other Humvee, then replace the tire.
Really?
And yeah, like,
oh my God.
There's definitely all that sort of stuff going on in the military.
Is that what they still call it?
What they call it?
Use it or lose it. It was when your budget came up at the end of the quarter. So if you had like a $50,000 budget, or more likely you had like a $500,000 budget.
That's it.
When the end of the quarter comes around, if you haven't spent all that money, let's say you've spent $450,000, then they go, oh, great, you only needed to spend $450. So next quarter, your budget's $450. And so what people would do as you're coming up on the end of the quarter is, if you have $50,000, it's barbecue time. It's something. We gotta have some morale events. We gotta burn through this cash. Because otherwise we won't have as much budget next quarter, and we might actually need it next quarter. And then if we go ask for it, we won't get it because we didn't need it the quarter before.
I mean, like, yeah, it's like crazy how you see it. I guess it's like someone that was like there. It's like, I was there doing survey work as a civil engineer, and it's like, there was like survey work to be done. I was one of 2 survey teams there with the National Guard that was like paid by the government to do this job. And like, a couple months later, all these like civilian guys showed up that, they didn't really need to be there, but they were getting paid 4 times as much as we were. And they were, really touting around about how stupid we were for surveying for the military, whenever we could have gotten a civilian job and gotten paid 4 times as much and just sit around and drink beer and not have the responsibilities and all this bullshit. And it's everywhere in that system. And
like how they build roads, like cost plus contracts. So the way that this works is they'll say, okay, we need to have a highway built, and we don't, or an off ramp, right? We think it's going to be a $5 million off ramp, something like that, off of a highway. They'll contract with the company, and they'll do a cost plus contract. So what that means is that let's say it's cost plus 15%, because we want to give you guys a profit margin. We don't want to have to deal with trying to figure out exactly what it's going to cost to build this, because it might be a little more, it might be a little less. So we're just going to give you guys basically a blank check, and you guys build the off ramp. Then you tell us how much it costs to build that, and we'll write you a check for that amount plus 15%, right? And what this means is that the people that are building the off ramp make more money if it costs $7 million to build the off ramp than if it costs $3 million. Because you can do the math and multiply 15% by those 2 numbers and know the difference in their profitability. And that's just very standard procedure. So it's not like we're talking about one-off kind of craziness here. This is just, and people are not that dumb, right? It's just like when we're looking at Coinbase and some of the stuff that they've done. At a certain point, they've been too smart to get this far to suddenly become dumb only when it's convenient and puts money in their pocket. Like, that's not dumb. That's brilliant. It's
yeah,
evil,
and another
brilliant.
thing. Yeah, and another thing about the roads is I heard what they also do is they'll buy a surplus of supplies. So they'll buy way more supplies than they actually need, and then after the contract is done, then they sell the remaining supplies off.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Like, hey, we just got free stuff. Sell it.
It's an incredible money grab, honestly. Like, it's, you know, whenever you're like, God, the most popular guys were the supply sergeants, you know? They were the ones that signed those papers that said, hey, this thing disappeared. We need a new one. Those guys are popular.
Yeah, no, like really quick, related story that was more recent. Apparently, the U.S. Embassy in London is not up to standard, so they're going to buy a new one, or build a new one, and it's going to cost $1 billion. And it's like, I don't know if you've been in London, but the buildings there are really small, especially the embassies. Like, as you know, the Ecuadorian embassy, to just give an example, it's really small. There's like because when you look at the building, it looks like a big building because it's like this 5-story thing, but the Ecuadorian embassy actually only has the first floor. So it's a very small building. Like, I cannot imagine, like, Ecuador is not the United States, so obviously the United States would probably have a bigger building, but it's like, why do you need $1 billion to build this embassy? Like, are you housing diplomats there on a regular basis that you need like really high tech stuff in there, or what the hell is going on?
Hide the money.
Obviously, embassies are just station posts for the CIA, so they need to put all the cool James Bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
unless it's got a built-in fighter jet, I don't think that $1 billion is realistic.
But dude, have you seen some of the stuff that Q makes, man?
The CIA doesn't have anything as cool as an iPhone.
Oh boy. You guys ready for this next story? Going on in Asia. Man. A so far very reliable South Korean Bitcoiner / journalist. But there's a flip side to this. Crypto, they're not banning trading. In a meeting of a agency called the Financial Stability Board, with these major countries all as board members. Farting completely right now. But long and short, this is an agency that deals with a lot of global financial policy. It has the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, the World Bank, all participating in it. And at this meeting, South Korea is pretty much national coordination on dealing with crypto, like trying to curb trading, figure out a way to prevent this from just allowing commerce at a scale they can't do anything to stop. Yeah, it's this quote, virtual currency is too risky to ignore. Improve transparency, prevent the spread of speculative transactions, and prevent money laundering. Well, domestically, and they've clarified that, they are trying to different global financial players together to coordinate internationally things in. And yeah, saying I don't think that should be ignored or just allowed to occupy a corner in your mind and just happen in the back.
Well, the thing that immediately stood out to me, as I said in the chat, FSB, is the same acronym for the Federal Security Service in Russia, which is the direct successor of the KGB from the USSR. So I think they should have chosen a better acronym for that.
Totally.
KGB,
Yeah.
we take Bitcoin. We want.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of interest in South Korea. I mean, the prices in South Korea are always, what, 10% higher than everywhere else in the US, or in the world, sorry, including the US. And that shows that there's just a ton of demand, right? There's a lot of pent up demand that's trying to acquire Bitcoin there. And they would love, obviously, if they're buying it at 10% more, they'd obviously love to buy it at 10% less. So if those floodgates ever get opened up, there's going to be a big influx there. So that's one of the things that keeps me very bullish about Bitcoin in general, is that whatever the prices are right now, they would be higher if it wasn't such a pain in the ass to get your hands on. That's usually a good thing.
Yeah, I think this story was pretty interesting to just see how, like, you know, there's already so much people interested in this market over there that they like calling for this government official to step down because of, I guess, these wishy-washy sort of statements coming out. I mean, like, I just think it's interesting to show how, like, Bitcoin getting involved in like the actual political structures, showing like, hey, like, these markets are important, and you start fooling around with them, you might lose your job in that government cushy seat.
Yeah, because wasn't there, I didn't check whether it was legitimate or not, but I saw someone say something that there was a petition going around to actually get the foreign minister or the financial minister removed because of the ban. Like, and it had a lot of signatures. I didn't know if that was legit. Did anyone hear that?
Yeah, I heard that. But, I didn't see it verified or disproven.
Yeah, so apparently people in South Korea were so angry that they're like, remove these people from government because they're engaging in market manipulation by spreading this FUD about banning it and stuff. It's funny.
That is awesome. I mean, that's what we need to have, right? Enough passion, enough people that are convinced that they should be allowed to own their own money and not have it screwed with by other people. That when they try to do that, they get pissed off. That's very, very helpful.
South Korea is and the kind of shit they've had to happen over like the past like half decade. Like obviously like all the Samsung and market manipulation and insider trading. There's been a few big instances of companies getting busted for that. I might have my timetables a little sure if it's exactly around like 5 years ago or maybe a little further back than that. The ties between some like weird that's kind of big in South Korea and the office of the president. I'd imagine that any South Korean paying attention to their politics over the past decade or a little probably pretty pissed off and mistrusting of their government.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a complicated area. I mean, like, I'm not really well versed in South Korean politics other than to know, like, it's definitely not just there. I mean, like, you know, we're heavily based there, and, you know, I know Japan's got a heavy influence, and, you know, China's a big power player over there. I'm not really well versed in those politics, but I mean, it's definitely going to shake up here in the near future.
All right, you want to tell us about this fucking cool thing that I thought was stupid at first, Rick?
So you talk about Bitcoin raves?
Yeah, not specifically Bitcoin raves.
Well, blockchain raves, a rave based on the blockchain. Like, yeah, it's something where whenever I first like read the title, I was just like, God, this is kind of jokey, but you know, looking into it, it is pretty interesting and just like a nice little read about the possibilities, you know, opening up in this ecosystem. And you know, it's like basically these people issued like some tokens that have to be advanced to certain block height before, you know, they can be spent. And so it's like basically, you know, that whenever you issue these tokens, they're going to, you know, these are the people that are going to show up to this event, and it's not going to be anyone else. And as far as like the messages going out, they were all PGP encrypted. And, you know, once you got there, you know, you had to have the token for admission. And then, you know, once you got in, there was even some, you know, some odd like proof of stake, proof of work thing going on, to where you were basically, you know, instead of creating a peer-to-peer network, you're creating a friend-to-friend network, and like basically just a trusted peer-to-peer network. And, you know, that's where it's like, I don't know, this goes beyond the idea of a rave. Like, yeah, we could call it a rave because it's like the, you know, the scene, I guess it makes sense. But really, it's just an interesting way to come together. And like, you know, we can see this, like, you know, like they're saying, like, it's kind of like you saw it with Burning Man. It's like these decentralized movements and stuff. And, you know, people coming like voluntarily. And like we're saying, and I just think it's definitely going to be useful in the future, you know, because right now it's very easy, you know, where if you spend your money on something that the government doesn't want, they could shut you down. And, you know, in this age of mass surveillance, it's really hard to try and come together and try and create an environment that is trusted, and, you know, everybody there is not really going to be working against you. And I mean, there's definitely ways to still play these things to where you could try and get an informant in there. But, you know, it's just making it harder. It's making it more difficult, and it's using the technology of the day. And it's something where I could definitely see the application of it being used, you know, like we're saying, in political movements, and basically just some stuff outside of just like a rave. Like the rave is a great way to sort of set it up. But, you know, I think it's showing the importance that's going to move forward with PGP and all this stuff. So I think right now I'm trying to get this BISC account set up to where it's running smooth, and trying to get my Keybase all up and running, because yeah, hey, you know, y'all are having one around Denver, I'll show up and just like you know, figure out what y'all are doing there, because it looks pretty interesting. I don't know how much raving I'll do. I'm not much for the Vaseline and the doctor knows things anymore, but like you know, I'll go over there and figure out what kind of tech you are fooling with. It looks pretty interesting.
What I think you might have to clarify the Vaseline comment. I'm not able to process that.
Was that past? Come on, Jada. You remember the old days where you'd see these kids walking out with these doctor masks, just like dancing around, just because, you know, the Vaseline opens up the nostrils, and like you're having this amazing MDMA like you know, experience of just breathing air, and the Vaseline, it feels so good. All
right. I'm definitely, somebody's gonna have to edit that into something else later. But all right, moving right along.
Wait a minute, what is Vaseline's the stuff you rub on your chest, right? And like what is that? Oh, that's Vicks Vapor Rub? Vicks Vapor Rub. That's what it is. Like, all right, so I got those two things confused. Vaseline and Vicks Vapor.
People put that on their face.
I'm so uncomfortable right now.
You take like Vicks Vapor Rub and you put it like right under your nose, and like when you're rolling, it intensifies it.
Yeah, the whole reason you put it on your chest is because it's so intense that you're not supposed to put it on your face.
Dude, those raves are so crazy. You could do whatever you want. I mean, yeah, and they'll come out saying, yeah, that was the right move at the time.
About a room full of people who get high and look at stroke.
Not me.
That's where I can't think it's got to be like a real rave. I mean, because real raves are pretty nuts. But I mean, like, you know, there's this interesting tech and all this. Like, I'm sure you got to be talking about it. Like, there's got to be like a lit corner where people are like, what the hell is this? You know, and like, what are we doing?
It does sound pretty interesting. I mean, it's kind of a cool idea that they're encrypting the data. They're putting it out on the blockchain. It's kind of an announcement, but you can only see it if you have, you know, the right PGP keys, and then you're able to see the announcement, and then you get access to some kind of an app. It sounds like. I mean, I'm just trying to parse it together.
It sounds like they use a DAO. I would like to see where this DAO is, because the only one we know of kind of imploded. So
yeah, no, it sounds like
the way I took it was like a transient blockchain that's kind of like only maintained for the rave, and you just let die after that, you know.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Either way, it sounds like the app allows you maybe to have an influence on the music that gets played at the venue, and that, you know, maybe there's a certain amount of sort of like anarchic community that that spawns up for a short period of time. So it sounds kind of fun. I mean, I'm glad that people are experimenting with it, but what's really cool to me is just how kind of cool blockchain stuff is, right? That Bitcoin is a cool kids thing, because that's obviously always good for adoption.
And Janine just this is the artist who made the image in the article. I don't know, it's
Yeah, I thought I just wanted to share because after I read that article, I liked the image or the style of the image, and so I found the artist, and he makes like these kind of, it's like the style is like that it's like the stuff you would see on the covers of like older science fiction novels. So I thought that was cool.
Or comic books.
Yeah, comic books as well.
Half vintagey comic style.
Yeah, there's like an actual, I'm like trying to think of the name right now, but it's like, it's escaping me. It's like an aesthetic that it's like got an actual name for it. But yeah, like I don't know. It's like, it's gonna be interesting because I think like the Raves thing, yeah, it might grab some kids that are you know, not thinking about Bitcoin or blockchain, and they're gonna be like, hey, what's this interesting thing? You gotta get this to go to that. And so yeah, it'll bring more people into Bitcoin, and just like also an interesting way to get together. I think that's like the most important thing about it. Just like the idea of like having a get together where the only people showing up are the people you want to know about it, and the only people getting in are the people you want to get in. I think that's like that's pretty interesting. But
which
I still think it could be co-opted a little bit.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't really need a blockchain for that, do you? I mean,
yeah, I actually think it's pretty interesting, like application of webs of trust, and I mean, this could go a lot beyond just partying.
Yeah, I mean, but webs of trust don't. I mean, I guess a lot of those people have been exploring, you know, blockchains for that, but I don't think you need that kind of thing for. I mean, all you need, like the PGP stuff has been around for a really long time, way before blockchains. Like anyone can use PGP without using a cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I know, but the way like that app is structured, like you just have this temporary blockchain that just is mined and like staked for this event and then just dies afterwards, and you can just like delegate of who is in like a physical space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with Janine. I'm not sure that it's necessary to solve the problem that they're solving, but on the other hand, stuff like this, I'm kind of like, well, if they're screwing around with it, that's fine. I'd put it in the screwing around category.
But how can you? I mean, how could you do that?
Take this.
Go ahead.
But like, take this and think about like security building, like managed in a way like this.
Well, so if it's a brand new blockchain, then you have to tell everybody that it exists in order to get them to start watching it. And that's a message, right, that you're sending out. Why not just send out the announcement message? And I don't know. Maybe there's something going on here that I don't get. But just to play devil's advocate, why not just send out the announcement message itself encrypted so that the recipients can then decrypt it? That's just normal, regular, good old PGP.
Well, no, I mean, because like the app in your phone and the phone interacting with other phones in the area are all like chain recording, like the people are here, the right people. That next step further, like if you have a web of devices linked together, each other's presence, and just having a record of that, like that, a way to kind of rethink a little bit how you handle or automate like physical security for physical space.
Well, that's where it's like, I don't know. The interesting thing about it is like, you know, I don't know. It's like any one of these things is not really secure enough, like, especially in today, the mass surveillance state. Like, I mean, like, I don't know. It just like anything that can help bring a group of people together to where they can, you know, talk in confidence without like being surveilled. I think it's going to be really important in the future. And I mean, like any one of these systems, like we're saying, you know, I mean, I don't know, I guess you could co-opt it, like really, like you could work with it and you could try and figure your way to get in there. But I mean, the more redundancy you have in there, the harder it is to actually surveil. So
yeah, I guess I don't really know enough about what they're using it for or what they're doing, but yeah, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm just glad that I'm glad they're at maybe they've got an interesting application, but at least they're screwing around with blockchain stuff. They're playing with PGP. They're using it to set up a venue. They're understanding the ideas of encryption. And like you were saying earlier, Rick, I mean, this could be just for a rave where people are screwing around, but it's also could be something that that people in Iran or other countries where they're not able to assemble and have a conversation about problems could use to coordinate. And if things get weird here in the States, it'd be great if we had a couple generations of people that were used to using military grade, to use that cheesy phrase, encryption in order to communicate and have private discussions and not have their rights trampled on.
Yeah, I mean, like that's like I think would be the goal, and like I don't know how exactly that's going to come about. I'm not saying that this blockchain that they're doing and like this is the best way to do it. It's just, I don't know. It just sort of like reading the article, it opens up these ideas of like the possibilities, going forward. And it's one of the things that I think, yeah, like this would be important because yeah, it's like mass surveillance is it's a big problem in our time.
Yeah, totally.
So you want to try breaking down our bit of fake news for the day, Jihan?
Yeah, so you probably saw Paul Krugman or Isabella Kaminska tweeting about
sorry, his name is Harry Seldon.
Okay. So you might have seen some so-called no coiners, as they're known, tweeting about the fact that a Bitcoin conference in Miami does not accept Bitcoin anymore due to fees and congestion. Well, that's, as you know, with a lot of fake news, they always take a little bit of truth and then they blow it out of proportion. So if you actually go to the Bitcoin Miami website, it says we have and always will accept cryptocurrencies for our conferences up to 14 days before the event. So they have not stopped accepting Bitcoin for their events. They have just had a cutoff period where they stop accepting any cryptocurrency whatsoever, not just Bitcoin. So that applies to Bitcoin Cash. That applies to Ethereum. I don't even know what they accept because I've never been to this conference before. Based on the speakers, it looks like I don't know anyone at the conference. But yeah, it was funny because people like Isabella were like, "Yay, look at this! Bitcoin sucks because you can't pay for a conference." If you scroll down, she even says that, this is Twitter. I don't research the stuff that I tweet out. I'm a journalist. I'm an editor of a publication, but I don't verify the things that I tweet out. Hopefully she has a higher standard for the things she puts in her article, but who knows? So I think there was another, so basically, there's the little truth was that yes, they did stop accepting Bitcoin 14 days before the conference, which I find a little weird. It's like, why? They claim that they did say that the reason they do that is because of fees and network congestion, not on just Bitcoin, but just in cryptocurrencies in general, I guess, which I find a little weird because, we were at a Bitcoin conference that took Bitcoin up until I think the last minute. They were offering cheaper tickets initially, obviously, because that that probably is easier for them to handle. But one thing I want to point out about this is that Bitcoin Miami claims that they manually input every ticket payment. They don't actually have a payment processor handling this, which means they have to manually convert every ticket that's getting bought, which obviously that causes problems if you're doing that. And I would also love to know, because they didn't say, I would love to know whether the funds were getting sent to multiple addresses or one single address. Was the address a SegWit address or was it a multi-sig? because that all of like the answer to that question will affect, you know, the fees that they will have to pay once they, you know, try to exchange it for fiat, if that's probably what they did. But they as a conference should not be complaining about the fees that they're paying, because the fees when the transaction gets sent to them are paid by the person sending, not the person receiving. So that either means that they were getting a lot of complaints from attendees that the fees were too high, which I guess that means their attendees were not smart enough to use SegWit transactions, or not smart enough to send the transaction during a time of day where there was not a lot of congestion. Like, there's a lot of factors involved in this story that a lot of people just completely glazed over, and they're like, oh, Bitcoin mining, not taking Bitcoin. It's like, that's not the end of the story. Like, there's a lot of nuance here. But obviously, you know, this is an example of fake news, because the story was interpreted as this conference is this conference is rejecting Bitcoin, and that absolutely wasn't the case. But yeah, I think Shinobi, you should bring up the tweet, because I thought that was hilarious. We had Jihan Wu telling Paul Krugman that he should please try Bitcoin Cash. And it's like, dude, it's like, I don't think he'll want to try Bitcoin Cash any more than he'll want to try Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. So good luck with that. But nice try.
You're a big economist. That means you don't believe in Bitcoin because the blocks aren't big enough, right? Right?
But of course, you know, the true Bitcoin is Doge. You should pay in Doge. And also is doggies, because doggies are better.
I definitely like Doge more than Bitcoin Cash.
So the thing that struck me about this whole story is that Paul Krugman is like, he's like the chief apologist for the Federal Reserve, right? Like, he's a very famous guy. He writes nothing but economics related stuff in the New York Times all the time. I mean, he's a very famous dude. I think he's more famous than the current chairman of the Federal Reserve, right? As far as somebody that goes out and is always really pushing whatever it is that the Federal Reserve is doing, and supporting central banking, Keynesian economics. I mean, he's like the Dark Lord, right? Like, he's really up there and really super evil and justifying just about everything that you could imagine the central bank doing. And he immediately jumps on this story, right? Like, the story wasn't out there for very long before Paul Krugman is like doing victory laps. I mean, can you imagine like Larry Page, the guy that started Google, hearing some rumor about something that's even smaller than like DuckDuckGo, and going, see, these guys are complete clowns. They don't know what they're doing. And it turns out not even to be true. I mean, that is that is the best endorsement that you could have of Bitcoin ever, because he definitely represents the competition. And he is obviously scared about the potential, because we're still tiny. We're not even $500 billion. We're like $250 billion right now. It's irrelevant. But as soon as there's bad news about it, bam, he is on it. I mean, he is he's definitely watching.
And another funny thing about Isabella specifically is that, because we talked about Switzerland earlier in the show, a little birdie told me that she and her partner, I don't know if they have citizenship or they have residency, but they have one or the other. So they, have they have some ties to Switzerland now. So it's interesting that, she's a person who constantly talks about how Bitcoin is bad because it's going to become the next Swiss bank account. She's one of those people, which I just find interesting, because it's like, oh, you live in Switzerland, so you at least partially have residency in Switzerland. Does that mean you have a Swiss bank account, Isabella? Like,
yeah, I just saw this and I was thinking, like, like, isn't Paul Krugman like friends with Jamie Dimon, like in person? Like, I don't know, like I think they are.
I mean, he's a very well connected. Like, I would say if there's one person in the world that's most well known for being pro-Keynesian economics and really pushing the narratives of the central bank, I think he is like the guy, right? Like, he's more famous than Jamie Dimon, I would say.
His name, Alden. That is.
You break it up. I don't know what you said his name was.
Harry Selden. Okay, it's a joke. Anybody who's read the Foundation series, science psychohistory is self-admittedly the only reason Paul Krugman got into economics, because it was the closest thing he could find to psycho.
Yeah, there was this whole controversy on Twitter, like I think last week or 2 weeks ago, about how someone made a comment about how women didn't grow up with Star Wars in the same way that men did, and I just read that. I was like, yeah, because like I'm not one. Sorry, JW, not to not to trigger you or something.
Whoa.
Talking Star Wars here.
I have not. I've watched part of one Star Wars movie. I don't know most of the characters by name except for like Obi-Wan Kenobi and the R2-D2 robot. That's about it, because I was busy reading Carl Sagan, Cosmos, and the Foundation series and stuff. Like, I don't know, the Star Wars universe wasn't complex enough for me, so I just never got into it. And then all my
you guys were all smarter than my generation. We were impressed with the concept of laser guns. That was enough.
Oh yeah, I think that was probably why I wasn't into it, because it was like, oh, Star Wars, like I'm not really into fighting. Like the traveling around space was cool, but I don't know if it's a question of intelligence. It was just that, I didn't really have that. I didn't have that in my circle when I was growing up, and then when all the people, but then a lot of people that I was around with, they were fans of Star Wars. And like, there was one time where I almost did a research project into what is Star Wars, and I stopped because I couldn't do it.
That's awesome.
Well, it's an entertaining spaghetti western in space is what it is.
Laser guns and laser swords. That's all you need to understand.
Exactly.
It's all about Spaceballs is just Star Wars. Everything that they missed, they got in Spaceballs, and they did it well.
Yeah, I actually the one time that I did watch part of Star Wars, I was impressed by like the very libertarian ideals that I was picking up from it, and I was like, oh, I can appreciate that. But
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's better than if you're in high tech and you're a guy, you're either into Star Wars or Star Trek, and if you're into Star Trek, you're into like no money, socialism, and everybody wearing uniforms.
Hey.
I just like Spock. I just like Spock.
Making crazy assumptions.
I'm more of a Battlestar guy.
That's acceptable as well. I'll let that pass. If that was an interview question, I'd still consider hiring you. But if you say Star Trek, you're out.
Oh, come on.
Hey,
what about if you're just a Spock fan?
Star Trek has
if you're just a Spock fan.
Place.
No, actually, I think
superior, but it has its place.
I think Paul Graham, actually, the guy that does Y Combinator, I could be wrong. I think he has an essay on this very topic, the Star Trek versus Star Wars.
I'm just a fan of Spock. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know. Wait, I don't know how we got to Star Wars from Paul Krugman, but both those these guys are old. They need to stop talking about Bitcoin. Like I was just gonna mention, one thing we didn't bring up, but like another guy talking about it's like Warren Buffett just recently said like, oh, Bitcoin's gonna end in a bad way, and it's just like, man, I don't know. I wish they would take a lesson from Diamond, but I don't guess all these old legacy guys are gonna have to take the fall one by one to be, the idiot on the panel.
Well, Warren Buffett eats breakfast at McDonald's every single morning. So I think the fact that he's just holding it together and can have a coherent thought means, he's doing pretty good.
The McDonald's buffet. I'm surprised more people don't pronounce his name Buffet. Warren Buffet.
I think I tried when I was a kid.
Old Warren.
Yeah. Get out of here.
All right. Who's got some last serious thoughts?
Try to stay warm out there. It's kind of cold outside.
I sent a fee, Bitcoin transaction for 0.001 the other day. Took about like 4 days to confirm, but it worked. $1.50 or so, cheaper than that even.
Nice. Lightning's coming. That'll be my last comment. Is I'm really excited about Lightning. It's still looking good, and it's if it doesn't make Bitcoin a lot more valuable, then something's wrong.
Insert thunder noises on the horizon.
One more final thought though, like I caught the ZK Snacks, and if anybody watching hadn't caught it, go back and watch it. It's just a little show, but it's like real in depth about one story, and I like that. It's fun. We can try out these different formats. I think that's going to be a proper one that'll work for a few different things. So mad props, Janine and Shinobi on that.
Thanks, man. Well, I guess then, go check out ZK Snacks, a little shorter form info vid, and I guess we will catch you all after the weekend.
Later, everyone.
Peace.
Subscribe, volunteer.